Welcome to Construyendo el Futuro RVA. I think everyone here speaks English too?
Yes.
Cool. I always ask that around just to be sure, just to play safe. Okay, so tonight we are going to be talking about analyzing the deal to maximize net profits. But before then, let's just go around the room. If everyone just kind of introduce themselves, kind of show a little bit about you, maybe 15, 20 seconds, and then we'll go from there. So.
Hello, my name is Jonathan. I'm with CKC Group, and we're a real estate investing company. I'm here to expand my knowledge and start networking.
Nice, welcome.
Hi, I'm Alexa Cruz. I'm also here with CKC Group and just here to learn information. I haven't graduated high school yet, but learning early so that way by the time I graduate high school and get into college, I already know how to kind of work around the business.
Thanks. Awesome.
My name is Daphne, and I'm also a CKC Group. These are my children. And like you said, starting them early, expanding our knowledge, networking, and just getting to know the business a little bit better.
Hi, my name is Samantha. I'm from Pennsylvania. So I kind of have different businesses, but I'm mainly focusing on commercial real estate. As an investor, I've done a couple of passive investment into apartment complex, car wash, storages. Kind of like replace my active income with passive income, and so just here to network, kind of get a little bit more feel with here in Virginia, where I've done a little bit of ventures in Texas and Florida and different areas.
Yep, I'm Frank Portillo. I have an auto mechanic shop. I'm in Kent, and I'm here to learn about flipping and invest.
And he just did a great deal in Petersburg. You ought to see it online. Beautiful renovation. So I'm Mike with Richmond Mortgage. I do all kinds of creative financing, no credit check. It's all asset-based. It's our money. You talk direct to me or Lisa, and we give you a 5-minute loan app and give you a decision in 60 minutes. We also do fix and flip, new construction, any kind of creative financing, second mortgages, and we also do commercial properties other than residential. I have a hedge fund that I broker for that does, conversions maybe of office spaces and these kind of things.
That's awesome.
Carolina Vince, and I'm with EXP. I've been in real estate for 3.5 years.
It's a little while.
Yeah, having fun, just here to learn more.
Welcome.
Hello, Nordelis Ramirez, a real estate agent working with Rivera and Walker team.
And she has a translation business.
And I have another. Yeah.
And notary business.
Yeah, a lot of business. Alright, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Silvana Lucero. Work as a real estate agent with the Rivera Group and the Walker team as well. And I'm here to learn more, of course. Why not? We learn more and more. And I am an investor myself, so I enjoy this class very much.
Hi, I am Leonardo Suarez. I work as a real estate agent too in Keller Williams, and I work in Virginia Department of Health too as a project manager.
Welcome back. Yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is Dominar. I like to say serial entrepreneur. The main focus is definitely wholesale and in the real estate market in general. Working on some flips and stuff like that. My goal is to definitely replace my active income with more passive income, so definitely want to network with some people ahead. But yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Rebecca. I'm a wholesaler and an agent with our teams.
You also have a translation business.
Yes.
And she speaks 5 languages. So.
You always make me feel so good, right? Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm impressed with that. 2 is impressive enough. 3 is even more. 4 is amazing. You start going after 4, I'm just like, just add another language, So.
Hey everybody, my name is Luis. I'm with Eric and Rivera Group. Just looking to increase my knowledge, scale my real estate business with flipping. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to network with everybody and see what everybody's here for.
You're finishing up your first flip.
Yeah, I got my first flip. We actually walked it today, so we'll
as well. Just looking to learn more when it comes to analyzing the deals, given that I was working with a couple of investors here and there, so I need to be as knowledgeable as possible.
He has an accounting background, so he might be overanalyzing numbers now. And then,
I guess I like Adonja's approach, serial entrepreneur. Do a lot, but started off as a real estate agent, and now we do quite a few things.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. So I'm going to talk about analyzing a deal, right? So it sounds like, who's done a deal before here? Who's in a deal? Who's done like 5 or more deals? Who's done 10 or more deals? Good. So we got some experience levels. And I think, just like anything, there's different levels to it, right? But ultimately, it's really important to be able to analyze your numbers. Super, super important. I think that if you don't analyze your numbers in the beginning accurately and correctly, it will either make or break your deal. Doesn't matter how good of a deal you have. I've seen people not do so good depending on the numbers. But I always look at it from the perspective of 2 different things. I really look at it from the perspective of like qualitative data and quantitative, right? 2 fancy words. Basically, one is kind of like spreadsheet. And then there's also things that will impact your process that you don't maybe have in a spreadsheet, that you should have in a spreadsheet. So this isn't the most fancy breakdown. What I gave you is, if you don't have one, ask. We made a PDF, so you should have a little printout of how you should be looking at a deal, right? And I'll walk you through that process here momentarily. So this is interactive. Feel free to ask away, questions, feel free to give feedback, feel free to chime in, anything of that sort. Cool, so welcome. So let's go. We have a little slideshow behind. So here's some things that we need to know numbers-wise. So I think when you first find a property, you really need to know what are you going to be acquiring for acquisition price, fancy word, just saying the purchase price. The rehab budget, we use the word rehab, really just means renovation. And then I like to write in there all your additional fees, because there's a lot to them. I'm going to unpack them here momentarily. And then when you go into a deal, you really should be knowing ahead of time your ARV. I think that's really a big part of it when you're analyzing a deal, is to know, what am I buying it for? What is it going to cost me to renovate? And take a step back, kind of segue. When we pick up properties, we know at the time of us putting in an offer what we're going to spend on that property. Now, does it mean that it's 100% accurate, like to the T? No. Wait till you open up the wall and you find that it has termite damage, and now you're going to spend another $2-3 grand, right? That happened to us on a property out in Petersburg, actually, to be exact, and we had to replace like 15 joists, and that was $5,000 that we didn't account for. You might say it's only $5,000, but that was $5,000 of our cost. It would have been someone else's $10,000, $12,000 cost, right? So that's where it's kind of nice to have contacts. And now, pro tip alert, if you ever see someone put brand new insulation in a house that looks a little funky, like, why does this have brand new insulation when everything else is falling apart? They might be hiding something. Pro tip alert, ask me how I know, because we spend over $5,000 fixing that. So that's how they got rid of it, right? I wanted to be polite, and we walked into the basement and we see this beautiful insulation, and oh my gosh, this looks great. But I knew there was a small divot. And I was like, oh, that's not going to be too much. Maybe somewhere between $1,200, $1,500, no more than $2 grand. We can get that fixed pretty easily.
It was a little more than small. All right.
It was a little bit involved, but you could, jack it up and reinforce, and simply put, I knew it was doable, and that's usually a cost. But then fast forward, once we pulled all that insulation down and we saw everything else that was put together, I mean, you ever been in a fun house? That's what it was like. Except you didn't feel it from the top, because they put layers and layers, and they hit it well. And so I'm like, wow, and that guy seemed pretty nice. So nonetheless, you kind of live and learn. So why I say that? Because those are things that you're not going to be able to project, just unfortunately. But there's a way that you can hedge, meaning you can mitigate some of that. But there's no way to really 100% accurately do it. And if someone tells you that's the case, they're just lying. Don't believe it. So acquisition, renovation, additional fees will go into, And then ARV stands for your after repair value. What is the house worth once it's fixed up and you're gonna get ready to put it for sale, put it on the market? Questions? Yeah.
So ARV would be kind of like those fees with the rehab kind of consolidated into whatever the total price is added to the acquisition price?
Good question. Not necessarily. Your ARV is just going to be, once the house is fixed up and you do what you say you're going to do to it, what is it worth?
Okay.
And so really what you're going to get this is, some people use, prop stream and systems like that. Some people are going to be using the MLS. Some people even use Zillow. I don't recommend Zillow. Zillow gives you a rough idea. But Zillow's algorithm is going to be based on area. So for example, a quick way to do this is if you go online and you look at a Zillow, like their Zestimate, they'll show you, let's say you have a brick rancher, they might have houses that are 2-story, they might have tri-levels. They're just putting data, aggregating data of the area. They're not necessarily comparing apples to apples. So where you should be getting that information is like an agent. An agent should be able to give you an accurate number on what the house is going to be worth. But this is where it's super, super, super important. And we just went through this yesterday, and I did a little video on the grid group about it. So if you're part of the grid group in the Facebook, awesome. You would have seen it. If you're not, join. But I did a little video real briefly where, like, it sucked because this one individual bought this property way too high, way, way, way too high, right? So like the moment he told me his acquisition, there was no chance. Like there just wasn't. But that person didn't tell him that. And then by the time he told me what he had spent, we were already in the red to begin with. And so kind of go backtrack is that's where it kind of hurts. But his question to us when we met was, hey, if I add another bathroom, because right now it's a 1.5 configuration 2-story, which is a little quirky, especially because he has a first floor bedroom. So now that person downstairs has to go upstairs to go take a shower. It's kind of weird, right? You're kind of walking across your house, especially if the bedroom's in the back side of the house, which I don't know which one is more weird. Bedroom in the front of the house when people walk in, or you're in the back and you have to walk with a towel all the way upstairs, like either or. So I think that's kind of like, that's where I say qualitative versus quantitative, right? Because on paper, hey, it's just 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath. But when you think about practicality, that doesn't make sense, right? Like, would you want to live in that? Would that make sense for you? No, of course not. So this is where it's really, you really want to kind of look at the deal and go, what makes sense? This isn't rocket science, right? We can look at data to say, what is this house going to be worth? But then also think like practical. What would I want, right? Now, not saying like, go over the top of renovations, but what I'm saying is, would you want to walk across your house in a towel? No, then you need to have a bathroom downstairs. So his question was, what would it look like if I add a full bathroom downstairs? Would I make more? I said, there's a high probability the answer is going to be yes. Here's a concern I have for you, sir. If you don't add a bathroom downstairs, there's a high probability this isn't going to be very sellable. Meaning, I'm going to be able to sell it, but probably nowhere as close as what you even think you can sell it for. And then when I looked at the comps, I couldn't even find anything that sold recently. When I say recently, I went as far as a year, which you really shouldn't, because right now the market last year was very different. The market 2-3 months ago was very different. And the market right now in the last 2 weeks has been really heating up. So when I'm putting data, it's gonna be really iffy. And so I share all that to say that the fact that you couldn't find anything the last year means that no other investor has done that, because it was probably respectfully not a great choice. So my answer to him was, you have to add a full bathroom, because I really don't know where the floor is going to be now if you don't add the bathroom, meaning you're the pioneer here. Make sense? Which is not great news, by the way. You already spent more than you should, and now you're getting this news. It's really, really not great news. But the acquisition of the get-go was too high.
So a bathroom could cost $15,000 to $20,000,
depending on the finishes. I think it really depends. I mean, I'll share numbers. Our cost for a bathroom is just like $5,000. So, and you know, but again, we do a lot of volume. So for me, if I'm selling $5,000 and I can sell for 10, 15, I'm getting $2 per dollar, or anywhere between 2.5. We really would like ideally to stay between 2.5 to 3 times return. That's our goal. Doesn't mean we always achieve it. But here's my devil's advocate. If you don't spend the money, will you lose? How much are you losing, right? Because there are times, this is where, like, on the agent hat, when I walk a property with clients, and we're many agents here, I'm sure you can raise your hand and you know this, and they're walking, they're like, I love this home, but they don't have this. You know what? Yeah, this just doesn't make sense. I wish they did. And sometimes they don't even want to, like, entertain putting an offer in, or sometimes when they do entertain it, your cost is so much more affordable, hypothetically, as an investor, than there is. So they're going to ask you, statistically speaking, a consumer things that you're going to do costs us about on average about 4 times as much as it actually does. So they think that bathroom's going to cost them $20,000 to $25,000 when it's really only $5,000. Make sense? And so my perspective and recommendation is the hedge of you should do it, spend the $5,000, because if you don't, they're going to think it costs them 20 when it really doesn't cost them 20. But the reality is, you might not even get an offer on it. And if you do get an offer, they're going to hit you so hard that you're going to wish you just did the bathroom. So you might as well just do the bathroom. Make sense? But these are things that you want to take in consideration at the beginning. That when you look at comps, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath. And this all started because of Zillow, by the way. When you look at the data, it's just 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath. But it doesn't tell you that that extra bath to make it 2 full baths really comes at a really big cost if you don't do it. And that's really getting local market knowledge. You really should be getting that from someone that does this at a high level. So, questions so far?
One big thing I find when I work with investors is they want to know the after improved value, but I don't know their style. I don't know the finishes. I don't know their...
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing.
So that's a really big thing, right? So like when we are working with individuals, ourselves as investors, when we're doing projects, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to put into something based on the area. So we have one, like in the Mainmont area, that we did level 4 countertops. But I wouldn't do that into an entry-level house because that's just not practical, like financially smart to do. So you're not going to get a return on that. That person's going to be probably only able to afford to give you level 1 type of pricing, but you're putting level 4 quality stuff. So it's not that they won't appreciate it, but their pocketbook cannot. And so now you're just overspending and not really recouping that at a higher level. So it's learning the type of quality renovations and then who your end consumer is going to be. But that now goes into like the intricacies of like the renovation itself. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. So you mentioned level 1 and level 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I unpack that? Sure. So, for example, to give you an idea of just countertops, when you go into a house, and you might see this, go on the MLS or go on Zillow, you'll see this. When you look at countertops, you'll see that there are certain houses that have like, it is prominent. All these agents are going to be like, I know which one. It's like, think of, if you look at granite, level 1 countertops, the most prominent is probably going to be like this white one that has like these black specks everywhere, right? And that one, that just got off. That in particular is a level 1. Basically, the levels just means how luxurious it is, but it also goes hand in hand with how pricey it is. So, for example, you typically don't get into a quartz countertop until you hit level 3, right? So once you hit quartz, you're level 3 minimum. Quartz is more expensive. Then when you get into really fancy stuff, you start getting to level 4. That's really fancy stuff. You're probably going to be spending upwards of like $20, $22, $25 a square foot. If not even more, $30+ a square foot. And if you go into like Lowe's or Home Depot, you can easily go into $56 a square foot. If you ever need a countertop fabricator, let us know. We have an awesome guy. You know him, and he's incredible, and he gives us a really good price. So, questions?
I think
so. There's levels to this. There's levels to it. So the same thing, and there's really a lot when it comes to like countertops is just an example of that. Right. So, yeah. Cool. Let's go to the next one. Who's heard about the 70-30 rule? That was like, I have. 70-30? 70%? No? Okay. Donnie, I know you have. Donnie's over there. Luis? Cool? Yeah. Mr. Bedoya? Okay. So the 70-30 rule, for those that don't know, basically what it says is that, remember that last number? Whoop, not there. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I can unplug it.
Yeah, I would say unplug it and plug it back in. Cool, so we troubleshoot that. The 70-30 rule basically says that you should be all in, right? And it's a rule of thumb, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. But it says that you should be all in your acquisition and renovation at 70% of the after repair value. So an example, if your house is worth $200,000, 70% of $200,000 is $140,000. that means that your purchase price and your renovation cost should be no more than $140,000. Now, pro tip, that does not include all the additional fees. That does not include taxes, aka your capital gains. So that is just a rule of thumb. Another pro tip, it can be very challenging to hit that. And I'll give you yet another pro tip. The higher in class of an area you're doing commercial, so if you're going from a C class to a B class, you're going from B class to A class, it becomes super challenging to hit that metric. If not, depending on the area, like if you're in Northern Virginia, going to DC, it's impossible to hit that metric. And so that's where you start to have sometimes the ability to kind of be flexible with that. Like go to Northern Virginia, I know guys who are buying properties at 90% of ARV. And it's horrible, and they're making a 10% gross profit margin. Why do you think we have a lot of Northern Virginia investors? Right? Like that's just what happens. So when you have that 10% profit margin, it's not a lot. But now mind you, 10% Northern Virginia, it's a high price, right? Anything worth anything is $750 plus. So I have a buddy of mine building houses now. Shout out to Mike, and welcome. And he was building houses, luxury houses, for like $2.6 million. He was building them for $1.8, $2 million. That same house now is 4.2 to upwards of 3.4, 3.6 million. So 10% profit margin or something like that is pretty nice. So cool, we'll keep going. Okay, so not behind me. Well, I guess we'll ask Anthony. Someone could, yeah. Everett, ¿puedes hablarle al morenito que está en la pala? Porfa. Anthony, se llama Anthony. Come troubleshoot this. Thank you. So we'll go into the fees breakdown, we'll come back, but nonetheless, we'll go into fees breakdown. Want to continue? Just wait. Keep going? So let's keep going. So we have fees breakdown, we'll pivot to it. Next slide. So we're going to break it down in two different ways. One is going to be at the time of purchasing a house. What are the fees? We're then going to unpack when you go sell the house. What are the fees? And then we're going to talk about everything that no one else talks about that are also fees. There's a lot of fees in this, isn't it? So when you purchase a house, you're going to have, if you're working with a real estate agent, you're going to have to pay agent commissions, right? So whatever that is what it is. Talk to your agent about that. You're going to have also lender fees, right? So you're doing a private money lender, if you're going to be doing like a hard money lender, it's hard money lender, talk to him. He's got fees, right? Everyone's got to eat, and so similarly with the agent side, so you want to make sure you know what those fees are. I know when we're picking up properties, we are reverse engineering all this before we submit an offer. And so we have a pretty good idea of, again, what that profit margin is. Next thing we have is, if we start talking lender, right, there are some big national lenders. I don't typically work with them, but some people do. We have someone who currently is. It can be a handful. It could also be something, I guess, pretty nice, but they have a process. Now, all of that's essentially saying, if the lender, someone like, think like a Kiavi, that's a big lender, they are going to want a credit report on you, so that's going to be a fee. You're going to have, most likely, some sort of inspection fee, because they do require certain things. Next one we're going to have is going to be your appraisal fee. They usually require an appraisal. And the reason is because when you have some of these national companies, they don't have people here, right? They're big. And so they have to hire people that are going to come in and do this. Now, I think that would be maybe another class we could do, maybe, you know, local lender versus not, and some of the benefits. Definitely some upsides there. But they have these fees, and you really need to be knowing that up front, because that's extra money that if you didn't account for, you're going to have to pay. Next one. Questions on the purchase side? Sure. Y'all can smile. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. On the purchase side, some of the things that you may own. So we bought a parcel of land out in Petersburg, and it was many, many, many decades, aka they had nothing on record to show that how big is this parcel of land and where does it actually begin and where does it end. So we had to spend the money, we hired a company, they did the survey, but there are things that you have to pay for. Now this happens many times. We have a deal right now, Donnie, that we're talking to an attorney about. And similarly, we're going to subdivide the lot, so there's a fee to that. And sometimes there's just a fee overall because they don't have any record, especially if it's a large parcel of land. They don't know for sure how big, where does it end, right? They have an idea, but guess what? That city or that county is going to require that you as an investor, because you have all the money in the world, of course, you are the one who's going to have to spend the money to get this survey. So that does vary. Questions on that? Okay. Closing cost. So that's attorney, closing fees. That's going to be like your title insurance. That's going to be your taxes, your attorney fees, recordation fees, etc. Homeowners insurance, right? You don't have to. Certain lenders will require you. Most lenders I know of will require, and I personally think that's a smart and wise idea. Not a requirement, but something that you should do. I have seen people, my investors' clients, has happened now twice, caught on fire. If you have no insurance and you renovate that house, guess what you have? A big heartache. So, headache, heartache, everything. A whole lot of stress. So it's now, in my opinion, worth saving a couple grand to save on the insurance. You're also going to have your seller's closing cost. So now, why am I saying seller's closing cost? If you buy a property off market, there is a high probability, especially if you're buying again like through a wholesaler, Donnie could attest to this, you're most likely going to be buying it and you're going to have to pay the seller's closing costs. What does that look like? Usually going to have to pay like the attorney fees, the recordation fees, the title search fees, etc. Not that much more, maybe an extra, $1,000, give or take. But you want to take that into consideration. Every $1,000 adds up. Go ahead, Rivera.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, for my deal, right, like I just wholesale, not that it really matters to me, but I'm kind of curious, I would like to know, is there a rule to say, okay, my buyer is going to actually have to pay, I think it's 1% of like the sale price, including costs? Because in a wholesale deal, there's no agent involved, so you take out the 6% that will be in a regular transaction, right? So would you consider maybe like closing costs in that sense, like to be 1% or 2%?
That's gonna be a retail rule of thumb, generally above
Right.
200,000.
So how, is there a way for me to say, okay, I know that like the buyer would have this amount of money to pay in closing costs?
You're saying the buyer. So, okay, just to make sure I understand. You're a wholesaler, I'm buyer. You're trying to project what my closing costs are going to be?
Yeah, but I'm not paying any closing costs. The buyer is paying everything.
Well, I'll be honest, I think as a wholesaler, it's irrelevant to you. I don't know that I want to get into that business
so
of
like,
quoting.
The buyer essentially like covers all the closing costs
Yeah.
for himself and the seller.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like curious how much that.
Yeah, so not including like insurance and such, because that could get complex. They may do it, they may not do it. You're probably going to be looking at $1,500, give or take.
Right, like,
But then when you're paying their closing costs, that might be another $1,000 to $1,500. Just kind of depends. Depends if they're going to,
We do 3 to 4% for closing
Yeah.
costs.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I would suggest.
Depends on the purchase, but I generally don't do it less than about 6 or 7,000.
Because by the time you add all these other fees, there's going to be more. Which is why, as a wholesaler, I mean, your business, but I wouldn't go out quoting people.
Well, the thing is, like, I kind of want to have an idea. I mean, I can legitimately
Yeah.
ask him and be like, hey, how much you pay? But I don't, like, I kind of want to have this idea in my head of like, okay, well, closing costs for my buyer.
Yeah, I would say 3 to 4% potentially.
3%
Yeah.
of the sale price.
Yeah, because you're looking at $1,500. So let's say it's $120,000 house. We're going to be paying at least $1,200, $1,300, maybe upwards of $1,500. Then we have to get the insurance, which is why I'm saying I'm not including insurance in this, because insurance can be and is expensive. It's more expensive than like the house that you live in insurance. And then you have to pay the other person.
There's optional things like survey, owner's title policy. If you're going to get a lender, you have a lender title policy.
Mm-hmm.
So are you dealing with a cash or a financed individual?
That makes a big difference too.
So that's why it's just, I think generally you just go out and say this is the price, and then just say buyer pays all seller's closing fees.
Yeah, I would follow KISS. Keep it simple, smarty.
Well, I have everything in writing, so everything is in my contract, so the buyer already knows it. So
Yeah.
Cover everything. It was just more like, so I'm like educated.
You're just educated in. Yeah, it's smart to know.
Yeah.
That's what I would use as rule of thumb, Silvana.
But the buyer usually pays also the realtor commission, agent commission. So some buyers ask you, because they include that in the closing costs. and then it gets bigger, and then it's a surprise, and they ask you, why is it so big? And then you gotta go, and then you realize it's the agent commission, so that's also.
Yeah, as an investor, you definitely want to know what you need to know before you start to get ready to transact. The earlier you get educated, the more you can anticipate, so your numbers could be the most accurate possible. Daphne?
When I analyze, I use about 11%, and that usually includes the commissions, like all that stuff, and it gives me a little bit of wiggle room. But if you want to run numbers, I would use 11%. It's a little high on certain deals, and then it could be a little low depending on other deals.
So when you do, is that for the listing side as well? Is that all the fees, or that's just a purchase?
Like for my flips, or in her case, like she's trying to do wholesale and try to estimate, I do a rough 11%.
Daphne, is that included, the 11%, is that accounting, like the agent commission when you go sell it, I'm assuming? Okay, that's smart. I like that.
I try to, so before I do beauty stuff and all that, I was an accountant, so that's where numbers, if the numbers don't jive,
There you and Eric, there you go.
Good
numbers.
Yeah, it's roughly about.
So that's pretty cool. So Daphne, did everyone hear what she was saying? She would suggest, and what she does in her business is actually utilizing 11% as the spread, right, the cost, because she knows that she's going to have to hire an agent when they go sell the house. So she just calculates it up front as 11%, maybe slightly high on some properties, but it may be slightly low on some properties. So on average, it comes out to be about 11%.
Everything.
Yeah.
So for some properties, it even includes staging the property.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
So, for example, in our experience, I haven't.
Daphne, you should come up here.
I'm sorry if I'm.
Oh, you're fine. No, leave it.
You know, in my networking, what I like to do is find the realtor agents that, or the realtors that have the extras, right? So some will include the staging, or some contractors will actually carry the cost of your rehab until the end and charge you a certain percentage of, you know, interest. So it's just finding those key people to run your numbers, essentially.
It saves you. She's being smart. She's cutting costs, compressing that so that way she can maximize her ROI. So there you go. So pro tip, spoke slightly about it earlier just now, your insurance. So your insurance on an occupied property is not the it's not the same policy that you want to be getting on a vacant property. Do you know why? So when you have a vacant property, there's such a higher level of risk with that property. What do I mean? No one's there. You can have people breaking and entering. You can have squatters. You can have people come in and take your stuff, theft, right? You can have someone come and burn down your building just because. That's what happened to one of my clients. On Thanksgiving, mind you. So things do happen. And so you want to make sure that you have the right type of policy. If you don't have the right type of policy, example, let's say you call your typical insurance agent, you didn't tell them it's an investment property, you didn't tell them that it was vacant, and they give you the wrong policy. You do not want to be finding out that you got the wrong policy when you need to actually be exercising and using it, because they might actually say that, hey, this is actually voided because you got the wrong policy for this property. And now you're stuck with the bill of everything.
So one of my borrowers called me Christmas Day. I guess the power went out. Yeah, it was during that snowstorm. Went out. His new construction, totally finished, water pouring down the second floor, down the front steps, out the front door. The pipe burst up in the upstairs bathroom. I wasn't insulated properly, or was installed wrong or something. And huge damage. But if he had the wrong policy, if he had Lloyd's of London or one of their spin-off corporations, probably would have gotten maybe only a third of the money he needed. But he had the right builder's risk policy for a vacant property. So he got reimbursed for everything.
And that's what you want. You want a builder's risk policy. That's what I recommend. Let me rephrase this. I'm not an insurance agent, so that's what we get on our properties is a builder's risk policy. And they know it's vacant. They know that they're taking a risk. Now, I will tell you, to be very super transparent, not everyone will give you that policy. And sometimes it could be challenging to get that policy if you're a brand new investor, only because of the fact that you don't have a record. So you're seen as the highest risk. Why? Because they're looking at it as you don't may potentially know what you're doing. You're taking on a property, right, which is a risk. Real estate, and everything's a risk, but real estate's a risk. And in addition to that, it's a vacant property. So no one's going to be living there. So if something happens, you may not know till the next day or many days. So that to them, that's like the highest level of risk. And because of that, number one, it does cost a premium. And number two, if you don't have relationships, it may take you time to actually be able to get someone. When I started in investments, doing it for ourselves 5 years ago, I spent 3 days calling different insurance agents, and I ended up getting a gentleman, Matt Boucher. We no longer use him, but we did so literally last month. And I actually got him to insure us, and it was because I actually called a previous client of ours who lived in Vegas now, that I knew was a big State Farm insurance agent here, shout out to Luz, and I called her. She said, oh, I don't know the guy, but we did tons of business together, things that I couldn't, I sent to him. She connected me to him, and he goes, who are you? I told him my name. He goes, how did you get my number? I said, Luz Rios. She no longer said, oh, I love Luz. How can I help you? I told him. He goes, have you done this? I said, no, but I've done it with clients. I've done it blah, blah, blah. I've done it hundreds of times. This is a situation. I've never had any issues. I'd be happy to pay a little bit of a premium. He said, look, we'll give you 2 shots. That's it, right? I'm going to take a risk on you. I'm going to do it. He did it. It went well. And then after that, you know, again, connections. I've recommended that person to a lot of our clients for that reason. Because through our relationship, he was like, okay, that person will work with you. Yes. Okay. He knew we never had an issue, so therefore he had comfort. But otherwise, he wasn't willing to risk. And I spent days, like I said, 3 days to be sat, calling around, trying to get someone to do it. And everyone was just like, no. Fast forward, I finally called one of my contacts, and I found out the reason is because those policies, at least ours, when we sell the property, we cancel the policy, we get reimbursed the difference. So the profit that they make is so minimal for the amount of risk that they're taking that they'll prefer to just insure homeowners that live in their house versus be insuring houses that may get potentially vandalized, especially in C or B class areas, just high risk.
And if it's not a terminal issue, don't use your insurance policy.
Yeah, we had an incident where someone kicked our door, and we sold that property. It's now gone. It happened like a week and a half before closing, and of course I found out because one of our team members is a Richmond PD, and I get a call. My wife gets the call. I have my do not disturb. My wife wakes up. She wakes me up 3 o'clock in the morning. If you saw it, follow me on Facebook. I had this one thing like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was me driving down the expressway, and I put a little police. I wasn't going to say anything. I didn't want to blow up my deal, right? Like, I'm selling this property. But I said, one day, I screenshot it. I said, one day, I'm going to share that story. Today's the day. Someone came in. You know what they stole? We have an alarm, by the way. And shout out, we use Simply Safe as well. And that alarm went off. The person kicked the door in, vandalized beautiful, renovated house, kicked it. Alarm goes off. They panic. They're looking to see what they're going to take. They end up taking all the bed covers and sheets and pillows off of the primary bedroom. It was a really cold day. I digress, but truth, I felt bad. So I pulled up and I'm like, man, it was a cold night. Like, it really was. So I did feel bad. I'm human. And then I kind of chuckled. I'm like, come on, man, really? You like las sábanas? Like, really? So he took all the sábanas, las frisas, las almohadas. He took all of it. And that was all they took. That was it. The bigger cost, that's stage are still nice. We still work with them, but they did charge us a premium for those. I promise you, I know that wasn't the cost that it was. We were complaining about the cost as we saw it. But I say this because we mitigated, right? So sometimes like, well, how much more am I going to make? Why am I spending $300? Why am I spending $20 extra? Because of the fact that when it does happen, it's not if, it's just when it happens. If you're going to be in this business long term, it's going to happen. Accept that. And when it does, you want to be prepared.
We don't want to lose our insurance agent over $1,200 or so in total.
Yeah. Our contractor tried to be a little bit proactive and put a sign that said, do not enter, we will shoot. And I was like, that is not very good for the MLS. And I pulled it off. But it worked during the renovation. It was kind of cool. So I was going to share that one, and then I remembered that we were going live. So I was like, don't share it until after the fact. Lots of fun stories you'll see in the coming weeks and months. So questions on the purchase side. Wrap up that side so far. Luis.
So I guess for an example, like I've heard of the 70% rule. What's realistic right now?
Good question. I mean, there's compression everywhere, right? So now, and what I'm going to give you an answer, but I want you to know that the market we're about to enter is a different season. And as rates come down, that's going to be an interesting season. That could be a whole other class. But the point being, I mean, so typically it was like 70-30. We can be seeing 75-80, right? Like that's probably really where you're going to be at closer realistically in today's market. And so some people, you have to question yourself, like, am I willing to take that risk for that type of ROI? I think it's a personal decision.
It's a business decision at that point.
It is. And the way that we rate, and this could be a whole other class, we rank rehabs, renovations for projects as, is this like a light rehab, intermediate, or is this like a heavy rehab? And that's how we rank them. And there's certain profit margins that we'll be willing to take based on where it falls into that. That could be a whole other class, but that's hopefully gives you enough meat, to chew on. Cool. So now the selling side. So on the selling side, we're going to have agent commissions, surprise, closing costs, surprise. We're also going to have closing costs where we talked a little bit about it, but on this side it tends to be a little bit more economical. You're going to have like the attorney, the recordation fee, title search fees. You're going to have lender fees. Now, I talked about the lender fees in the beginning, right? But some do have points. Most, I would say, have points. And so points can be structured different ways. Some of them charge monthly. Some of them structure the deal where they wrap it on the back end. At the end of the day, you just want to know what you're getting yourself into, so that way you can accurately calculate. Now, how do I calculate points when I'm buying a house? Projection, data. Is it guaranteed? No, it's an estimate, right? Like when you look at an appraisal, what is it? It's a professional's opinion of X, Y, and Z based on data. So when we're looking at properties, we see, my rule of thumb, when houses were still selling in 6-7 days, we said 30 days. Houses are taking 3 weeks, we're saying it's going to take 60 days. And I also know my strategy. I don't tend to be the cheapest person on the market. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to be Walmart. So I say this because I know that, and therefore I know that I'm probably going to sit a little bit longer, and I'm okay with that. Because I also know that there's not as much inventory, at least in our market specifically. So I'm willing to do the dance a little bit. Make sense? So I think that's where Eric was talking about, kind of like knowing your quality work, and therefore you kind of know where you're going to land, and then being able to reverse engineer and having a realistic idea of where you're going to be. Make sense? The challenge with that is, are you going to do a 3-bedroom with 1 bath? Are we going to do a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath? Are we going to do a 3-bedroom with 2 bath? But you know what? That attic space is really nice. We could do a pop-up, and we can go ahead and reframe and redo the trusses, and now you got a 4-2 or a nice 4-1. You're like, and each time it's calculations. So it takes time, but that kind of is that. Questions. I'm trying not to get super complicated, but it can get really complicated. So I'm trying not to get stuck in the weeds.
Are you going to touch on like exit strategies kind of thing?
We can. You have time? Y'all want to talk about them? I got time. So, okay. We talk about lender fees to recap, right? So you want to recap the numbers, basically review them, make sure you're calculating your points accurately. And then we have pro tip. So lenders, like I was talking about, I already kind of gave it earlier. They structure their deals differently, so make sure you're calculating correctly. Some of them will do a monthly payment, some of them will wrap it in the back end, some of them have a mixture. Just make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. And that's really important, so you have the right amount of liquidity, meaning cash, capital, ahead of time. That's like, I see a lot of people get cut on that end, so just be careful. Cool? Next. So these are all the other fees. And then go, yeah. So, okay. So miscellaneous costs is, so remember we talked about like the 70-30 rule and everything that has to come into get calculated for. Daphne hit the nail on the head when she talked a little bit about staging. So one, you're going to go over in your rehab most likely. The newer you are, the more you're going to go over, right? Just going to happen. You really want to like mitigate that, but you're going to go over. So you want to know exactly how much you went over by to kind of connect the dots. At the bottom, you see where I say contingency fund. You should be having about a 10% buffer, like realistically, because you're going to go over. Now, we don't go over as bad, 3, 4, 5%. When it goes really far past that, like something really bad happened, right? And again, that's just rehab specifically. But other fee that you want to take into consideration is going to be your staging fees, right? Did you account that you're going to stage the house? We stage every single property. So we have made it our process that every single house that we put for sale for our investment, we 100% of the time going to stage it. And we have two different stages we work with. One is like much more expensive, but she does super well in the high-end market. And when you walk these houses, you can tell. You can really feel the difference. You walk in, it's super over-accessorized. I was so cheap when I was a newer investor that I considered just staging my own houses. And then I looked at the time. It's called opportunity cost. Like, what is your time worth? It wasn't worth it. And so, been there, done that. Pro tip, I'll just save you time.
Same thing with designing some of these properties. We have a lot of clients who are not designers. So your finishes, even style of home, with one bedrooms, I don't want to give it away. Maybe people know.
There was one that just like made oversized, supersized bedrooms, and then they had literally no living room. And you walked in, and it was the kitchen. I was like, oh, so we walk into the kitchen, and there's literally no living room, but the bedrooms were massive. And I was like, OMG, this is not going to be sellable. So on paper, it's a 3-bedroom. See what I'm talking about? It's like 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It was 1,100 square feet. On paper, this should have been a slam dunk. But his expertise is in construction, not in design. And so he, in his head, said, this is an amazing bedroom. And it's true, except people don't live in their bedrooms. So that was tough. So qualitative data, quantitative data. A lot that you should be considering that is not on paper. Staging renewal fees. If you're taking longer, right, I know that we're going to take a little bit longer. So we just now take into consideration, especially with the days on market being as high, right? We came from winter. Interest rates were at all-time high in over like 20 plus years. So we knew we were going to pay renewal fees. So we make it a standard to calculate renewal fees. And so we then looked for a stager that also afforded us a really good competitive price when it came to renewals. And then we were able to work a sweet deal where she even was willing to like even prorate it for us. So for us, it was like, this is a no-brainer. Because houses that don't typically get staged usually sell for a whole lot less. She could talk to you, Jessica, it's like 6-7% less. So to me, I pay an extra 1%, even 2%, and want me to pay to 6%. 3 months it's in the market, I already caught up as 1 month staged.
It doesn't feel like a deal when you're cutting a check to the stager, though.
It certainly doesn't. And I should give you a pro tip, get your emotions out of it.
Yeah.
You can't be emotional on the investment side. I think you have to just be like shrewd, because otherwise it just eats you up.
Yep.
And it's not, it would eat you up. So you have to be, and it's hard. I don't think that as humans we're like built to be like that. But I feel like you have to, because the moment you get emotional, you're not thinking logical, and now you make mistakes. So I think that's really important. Utilities and utility activation fees. No one talks to you about that. You call Dominion Energy, hey, I got to open an account. Oh, it's going to be an extra $100 and then blah, 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 blah. And if you're opening, different accounts, there's fees to that. Also utilities. A lot of people don't take into consideration that you're going to have electricity and water, maybe gas. And then when you calculate that, we had one that had a pipe burst. Thank God it was on the outside. Actually, thank God, because it could have been worse. Not from the perspective that, hey, we had a pipe burst, just to make sure we clarify that. And so why am I saying this is because that was like a $600 month for like water. And it was only 3 days.
$724.
What was that?
$724.
$724 because of pipe burst. And it wasn't even the pipe on the inside of the house. It was the outside going to the main line. And the way we knew is because we had a vendor partner of ours go shoot content to property. I'm in Leesburg, Virginia. Who knows where Leesburg is? Middle nowhere. Nice place though. But I'm in Leesburg, and I got a call, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to lose reception on the way back. Just letting you know. AT&T for the win. And fast forward, they're like, you have the water. I had to tell them where the Mercy is. They had to shut it, and then we had to go get it repaired. And then I had to deal with all this mud that now was sitting there. And of course, in the winter, that's not drying out fast. So I'm like, ugh, seed and straw, seed and straw, seed and straw. And you work with what you got.
And you need to watch your numbers, because 2 weeks ago, Dominion's charging us for a house that's not even hooked up to electricity.
Yeah, talk about this. Yeah. House that we have, tree fell on it before we bought it. And the main line that comes in is not even connected, because when a tree fell, they saw it as a risk hazard, so they cut it. And they cut it at the post that they have. But they sent us a bill. So I was like, hey, so we, being a little facetious to all, hey, we'll be happy to pay this bill if you can just bring the meter with you the same day. They're like, we're going to have to lay eyes to make sure that this is the case. I said, I promise you it's the case, but if you don't believe it, come bring the meter, we'll pay you the bill, and just install it while you're there. And they were like, well, sir, we can't do that. I was like, and of course, it's the minute, so we're trying to speed up the process. That's why. That's the only reason why we're doing that. But I try to make fun of it. Otherwise, I think if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So that's that.
But did you pay or you didn't pay?
Well, they won't cancel until they send the person out, and then when the person goes out, then they say, okay, you're correct.
Because sometimes
so it's a
it doesn't
process.
matter if you fight with them, they don't take the fees out.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
Dominion is Dominion. I wish that Dominion had a little more competition. Let me put it that way.
To answer your question, it said it sent somebody out the next day. We haven't heard anything since.
Yeah. So now we have to
$84 bill. So I was like, well, all of our other bills look inflated, and all other properties just about that much too. But they ain't gonna do fun. Architect rendering. So what I mean by this is, if you don't have an eye for design, go talk to an architect and a designer. And so you should take this, as getting an education, getting your PhD. You do this enough times, you'll be able to save a lot of costs down the road. So for us, for example, on simple renovations, I don't really use a designer because I don't really need it as much because I have a really good idea of what we want to do, especially at the price point. But when it gets to where I can't envision a space, or when it gets to the point to where it's much more luxurious, that needs to be done right. Like, people at that price point aren't buying because they need a house for 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. They're buying what they really love and what they emotionally feel compelled to buy, and that's a feeling, and you have to evoke that with how you design and stage, and I just pass it on to the professionals in that case. So even myself, I understand where my expertise ends and we need help. So learning where you land in that, you have to really be able to be honest with yourself. Permits cost money. We got a bill today for almost $2,000 for permits. I'm happy because we're getting permits done. It's $2,000, right? But we knew it was going to cost money. We accounted for that in the very beginning. Permit consultant. So we have a guy that helps us expedite our permits because of relationships. We can get a permit in the city of Richmond turned around in about 10 or 14 days when most people are not going to be waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, especially a building permit, which we are doing. So how much we're paying? A few extra $100. Is it worth it to us? Yeah. What is your per diem cost? What is your time cost? Your peace of mind? So you're going to pay. It's just how much you're going to pay and to who you're going to pay. So you might as well just be realistic with your numbers in the beginning.
I've never heard of that before. Is that something you would Google and find somebody, or is it more like a network thing?
It's network. It's on network. That's what I'm saying. Getting in rooms like this is all about meeting people. And for us, it was our, and it's time. So even though we're paying him, I get 10. We're doing, several projects at one time, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 projects. I can quickly, I can anticipate how much is that going to cost. But the time that would take me, especially if a hot deal comes to my table, that didn't cost me the $5,000 fee for 10 properties. It cost me $55,000. So my time is not worth a flat fee. It's worth the opportunity cost to go get something else. That's what my time is worth. And you got to start changing your thinking patterns. So it's your permits, your permit consultant. You got consultant fees, like I was talking about. So we have a consultant too. Years ago, I bought a property, made a mistake, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I had to look for a third-party consultant that was able to help me with a special use permit, AKA, I bought a property, got her money on it, wasn't allowed to do what I wanted, but I'm already committed to $200-something plus thousand. And if it doesn't materialize, we're not going to be able to bird this puppy. And so now you go, what do? That's when you lean into your network. And I called around, hey, I need help with this. And I called this guy, and this guy was like, oh yeah, this shouldn't be that difficult. I was like, well, I'm not going to hold you to it, but if you were able to quantify the probability of this materializing, or even possibility, what do you see this? He's like, I can't guarantee it, right, but it's probably going to be like a 90-10%. 90% that it's going to work out, 10% that it won't. I said, why 10? He was like, I'm just giving a number. To be honest with you, I think there's a high probability to work out. And I told him, he said, tell me a little bit of what you've done. And I told him everything I've done, right? I do real estate every single day, so I was like, I did this, I contacted this, I did this, I did this. And then his answer to me finally was, Ray, the individual you need to talk to that's going to make the decisions, it's a console person. I have lunch with that person on Tuesday. I was talking to him on a Wednesday. The next day, I dropped the entire fee to him, his office, and he called me and said, you only need to pay half of that? And I said, no, because I just want to get it done. And so here's me showing you that I'm not going to nickel and dime because I want it done. And he was like, I appreciate that. And you know what? They got it done. It was quick. It was easy. He talked about the Richmond 300. I mean, he handles massive. He was one of the people involved with like the casino. So he's really, really well versed with multi-million-dollar projects. And he has over 17, 18 years of experience in that, right? So to me, what is that worth? A few thousands? I couldn't do that. And the time I'm going to spend reading all that, what is that worth? So it all comes back to opportunity cost. But it's about who you meet and it's your network. So I think that's really, really important. So for us, if we know we're getting into a bigger project, we just pay the people. Just pay the people. Because the time that you're going to pay to someone, so you might as well. Make sense? Sure? That was so quiet.
Have we made any money yet?
You haven't made money yet. And so these are all the miscellaneous fees that you don't even know. But I also wanted to kind of provide you all a vision of other services that exist that can also help streamline your learning process, right? And all of that just costs money. But you can go work and make money. You're not going to get your time back. You're not going to get the heartache back. You're just not. Your peace of mind, waking up with cold sweats, been there, done that. That's not worth it. You have your designer fees. You know, they're going to help you pick stuff out, blah, blah, blah. My designer, the higher end one, offers me a service to where she'll source our stuff. So that's what we're turning to. So our higher end stuff, meaning a designer tells you how to design and they give you ideas, they give you colors, they give you all this stuff, right? That's the design fee. I asked her, what would it cost me if I said, you tell me what this would charge, like what you would charge me, you go buy it. Here's my budget, you go buy it. I don't want to spend 1 second of my time. All I want to do is go, no, 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 approved, 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 yes, 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 here's the card, go buy. Right? So think about how fast can you move? How many more houses can you go through? What is that worth? Oh, but that cuts in your bottom line. Yeah, but how many more houses can you jump into? And I'm not saying that this is for everyone. You could pick and choose. I just want you to be aware that these things exist. So I love picking stuff out, but when you have 6, 7, 8 houses, you jamming up the whole process, your contractor, you're paying fees, you're going to pay it. You're going to pay it. So, Luis.
So what would it make sense to use a designer? Like, does it depend on price point, areas?
Our designer specifically is going to charge you based on the size of the property and how complex it is. Meaning, like, you know, if you just have one wall, you're going to open it up, blah, 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 that's simple enough. But if you're like, hey man, like the one we have, I said, we have to nail this project. This has to have, so I already knew what price is going to sell. I already knew who I wanted to attract as an end buyer. So now that I know who I want to attract, and this is called value adds. That's all it is. In commercials, the same thing. You go into like apartments and such, you know, my value add to it. That's how you raise the property's worth, and then you rent it more and you make more. Similarly. So when I'm looking at this property, I was going, this is going to be, because of the price point, it's not going to be a first-time buyer. It's probably not going to be a younger individual, right? Now, mind you, I will sell it to anyone, right? So I think they just say I'll sell it to a young person. But there's a high probability based on statistics of who buys in this area at this price point. It's going to be someone that's a little bit older, and they're going to probably value a first floor primary. So I need to make a first floor primary out of these 2 bedrooms. But the problem is it doesn't have its own private bathroom. So now I need to make a private bathroom. But it needs to be not just like good enough. It needs to be really nice and sexy because it's a higher price point. And then because it needs to be nice and sexy, I also know that it needs to have a nice, sexy walk-in closet. But it needs to be private enough the way it makes sense, right? Like it has to be well put in together. So when a person walks in, first impression, they're like, they know. You ever got like in whatever, a nice hotel resort, and you're like, you can tell someone spent time thinking of these details. That's my goal with these properties, especially at higher end. Affordability, you can get away with a lot more, right? Because inventory is scarce and affordability is really challenging right now. So some people are just really happy just to get into a house. But when you're going into higher end, you better start thinking more than that. That's not going to be good enough. And so you got to think of this all in the very beginning. This is really easy, but it can be really complicated. Go ahead, same for you.
So when you hire a designer, how you do the contract with the contractor? Like for example, you say if you told your designer how much you charge me to go and get everything, but how you do the contract with the contractor?
Yeah.
When he give you a price to do everything,
I don't.
Like
So
he did you ask for labor price only, and then you're gonna get all the material with the designer?
Yes, we want to avoid padding on the material.
So I never, the contractor should not run my project. I run the project. So because if he puts something I don't like, shame on me, because now I didn't tell him and I let it be his choice. So the way that we avoid that is, like Eric said, I want your labor cost.
Okay.
What is your labor cost? And I want itemized. We use a system where I put everything in it. And the last one I got was like 75 pages long. And it was like roof, and it said this, and that has pay. Like it broke it all down. Okay. It's called Flipper Force.
Like,
and
sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No. Yeah.
And so and what's really cool is it sends me a text message or a PDF, and then I send it to my contractor and I say, here you go. But here's the thing, I already walked the house with the contractor. So we've already discussed this. So now I'm just putting on paper what I expect from you. And then when you price it, this is everything in here. And then we're gonna sign that, right? But all of this is just labor. If I put 24 karat vanities there, I don't care if it's the same price to put the Lowe's entry level or 24 karat. I just wanna know how much you're gonna charge me to do that job. And this is how I'm able to compress labor. But then also, I get to pick everything I want. Now, you do have to have a little bit of understanding of design, because if you say, I'm going to put a vanity here, and then you say, I need a double vanity. If he priced out a single vanity, he might get a little mad because I already sheetrock, I painted, I did everything. Now we have to break that to put another. It's not impossible, but understand that he's not going to be happy.
Especially when it's concrete slab.
We recently did that. We had a jackhammer. So stuff like that, you know.
Okay.
So like, for example, we did it, and I made a mistake to where I saw the gas line, and I don't know why. I didn't pay attention that was the furnace that was gas. And so because the furnace was nearby in a closet right next to the kitchen, I assumed, right, just kind of walking the house, I didn't really document that that is the furnace, it's not the stove. So then when we bought the stove and it connected, they're like, there's no gas line here. Like, what do you mean? There was gas, the furnace was gas. I remember this, remember we took it out, blah, 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 blah. I'm showing the pictures. He's like, zoom in, and I'm looking, I'm like, it was an electric stove. And that was a block wall and concrete floors. So guess what? Now we have to break walls, we have to break floors, and then put new plumbing in.
He was nice to us.
He was good.
Not in person.
Yeah. So it's stuff like that that you're like, okay. And then I was like, well, now that we have a gas stove, we might as well make it nice and sexy. So I might as well just put a really nice island with this inside of it. So I'm like, well, I want to pay you to break here. You might as well put this. Oh, and by the way, I want a pot filler up there too. You know, and that's what I did. I was like, I'm going to spend an extra $1,000. I might as well make it super nice. Versus, I'm going to pay you $350, but for an extra $600-700, I can make it like really, really nice. And that buyer's going to get that impression where like no one else is doing this at this price, not even close. I got to spend an extra $100,000-150,000 minimum. And relatively speaking, in Northern Virginia, that's like spending another $300,000-400,000. So to kind of put perspective into it, they feel like, wow, this is different. Yeah, that's what I want, because I want to stand out from, and that's my hedge as well. Okay. But I can't do that if I let him control the cost of material. I can only do that if I control the labor and then I source material. Now, I'm just, because of the amount of projects we're running, I'm letting a designer source material, which is better. She's better than me, and I'm just quantifying that time. I'm like, if we have to flip one house extra a year to just pay for her the entire year, that's worth it. Okay. Ton. Questions?
And the question was, because on the last house that I flipped, Mr. Mike gave me the loan. I started building like remodeling, but it was some like not good. So I hired a designer, give me a really nice design.
Yes.
And he told me like, oh, I can send you everything, lists and everything, prices and everything, so you can pick up.
Yes.
And I can go get it for you. Well, but I was like, how is that going to work? I already hired my contractor, and he already gave me price for everything.
That's why.
Material and labor.
Yep.
And I was like, I got confused, and I was like, so how does that work? And I asked him, and he's like, oh yeah, I can get things for you and look for the whatever.
Then maybe to have him work with the contractor and see the pricing. The challenge is that I'm going to assume, because most people are probably going to do this, that's their profit margin. What can I put in that's nice and acceptable, but everything is profit? And so for that same price, you probably could have gotten something else. Like for example, you go to Lowe's, Home Depot, you'll find a nice light fixture, but if you go to like Amazon at that same price point, you get something nicer.
Yes.
And that nicer speaks a lot to the end buyer who's going to come look at the property. Maybe not as important as a rental, but definitely important to fix and flip.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we do. Yeah.
And it's all contractors. Contractors are. All your contractors are good to work just for.
Nope. Nope.
Just for
It's not easy.
Nope. So now the way we do it is, here's the price for everything. I want your labor cost, okay? But I also have gotten to the point where I know what a 2x4 is going to cost me, a 2x6, a 2x8, and I learned this the hard way, by the way. My quadplex is costing me way too much more money. I went into that project, $95,000, $105,000. How about $220,000 cash? Like, that's just like, oof. I'm like, I spent for a PhD, which is why I get it. I get it. I've been there, done that. But guess what? You suck it up, you move on, and you decide, am I going to get back up on the horse after it kicked me off, or am I going to stay off? And I said, you know what? At the end of the day, this is the game of investments. I didn't lose money. I jammed up more money, but I'm going to get back into it. Because where else are you going to go to make exponential type of returns like you can in real estate elsewhere? And you can, but that's where, to us, it's like I have my active work and I have my investments that's still active, but less active because I have it more systematized. And then eventually I'll grab that and make it into super, super passive, right? And that's what I'm doing. And then eventually it just keeps going and keep going and keep going to the day that you decide, I don't want to do this anymore. Which is nowhere close in the foreseeable future for us. So, why? Because why would you stop? It's fun. So, getting punched in the mouth sometimes, I guess, keeps you alive.
Yeah, if you're lucky, you can try to partner with somebody experienced if you can find it. That'll help save you a lot, or you get kicked in the teeth enough times, you'll learn from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife complains about it. She'll tell you the opposite. She'll be like, no, this is horrible, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, the opposite of life is like eating rice without salt. Like, why would you do that, right? You know what I mean? Like, why would you do that? So we get material source increase. I try to be positive about everything because if not, you just cry and then you quit. And this is just a fact. So you just keep going. Like, just keep going. I tell my team this, just keep going. Just keep going. Yeah, just keep going. I hear you. I get it. I resonate. Don't eat into the emotion. If you want sympathy, I give you 2 minutes and then let's keep going. Like, I do this with my kids too. So
if, let's say on a 200,000, your profit is 10%, right?
Yep.
So out of your 10%, how much is going back to your lender or private money? So really, what are you really left with?
Your net.
Your net.
Yep.
It's really not 10% then.
So you're talking about like the Northern Virginia people. For us here, it's going to be higher than that.
At 10%? Higher than 10% for profitability here?
When we
For
talk
us,
profit,
yeah.
we talk bottom line take home.
Yeah.
We don't.
So
We
it's
most-
more than 10%, you would say here in this area?
Yeah.
Our deals are, or we're not buying it.
Yeah. But understand that there's a lot of compression. Like on the agent side, there's compression, right? Savings, we are agents. Getting deals, we typically buy, I would say 100% of our deals the last year has been off market. We don't buy anything on market at this point at all. I understand construction at a high level. I don't do it. I couldn't tell you how to do it. I can't tell you how to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it. But I have people that can, and I already have worked with them. But here's the thing, I have different contractors we work with. Well, why? Because some move faster than others, some have more understanding than others, some do different quality work than others. So I know for a big project, I'm probably getting the subcontract, but I probably don't usually go to a GC. I do have if I need, I'll have a GC that works with us in those situations, but I run the project. I have my own framers. I have my own roofers. I have my own foundation guys. I have my own plumbers. I can run an entire project on my own, and I know the costs, and I know what the average cost. I know what Ryan Holmes is paying for that, so I know what I'm willing to take because I'm not Ryan Holmes. So you see, so that's the difference. It's like I've gotten to that level where our goal is to get into large-scale commercial.
So like I do commercial, right, where it's out with multiple businesses and I'm like my profit margin, if I won't take a project, nothing less than 10%. And I'm like, if I can do, and really my comfortable zone is 20%, and so I'm like, if I'm gonna go in, I'm not opening a business if I can't make 20%.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Especially with investments. I think like, yeah. No, we definitely would not do what we do. It doesn't mean that it doesn't ever happen. It's just that shouldn't be your norm. So every time that we have a deal, we sit down, we look at the numbers, and we go, why did we make? Okay, we made this. Cool. What was projected? And this is where it's good to be organized. And we made this. Now let's look at all the numbers. And we literally have an entire log of like everything.
And you know, not all of them are gonna make 20%, right? There's gonna have your ups and downs.
Yeah.
But I'm like, because I'm a numbers person, I'm like, I can't, if it's not gonna work, right?
Yep.
The numbers are not
But then I
gonna
think it's hard to find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
It took years to get to, and we're, I mean, in the bathroom, at lunch, at breakfast, hey, this deal.
His partner makes fun of him, my partner makes fun of me. We spend a whole lot more time with one another than we do with our spouses or our kids, by far, exponentially. But it's a cost to an end. It's a means to an end. So I'm like, I'll give up 10 years.
I have businesses and I want time and freedom, and I'm like, this is not going to give me time and freedom.
I would say the more passive you are, the less you're going to make.
Yeah.
So it's understanding, like, what are you willing to take for that?
Or invest in your money. I think you said you did that in a couple of passive.
Yeah, I enjoy that part. That's why I'm like, my God, it's a lot.
Active, you're going to make a lot more because you're there day to day, but that takes you away from the other job. So then you got to calculate, is that worth it?
Everybody's got different situations.
And then are you happy, right? Because maybe the spreadsheet says you are, but you're miserable. Everyone's like, you're irritable. So, yeah. And then your contingency fund. So what are the fees that you encountered that you'd like to add? Suggestions, anything that we missed or you feel like we've missed?
Cleaning fees.
Good point. I missed that. Something so simple. You got to get your house cleaned. So that's, I think, a biggie. Especially, right after you get an offer, everything went well, and now you have to get ready to sell it right before closing. Someone's got to go in there and clean it. So, and I've been guilty of forgetting that, and then having to go in there and be like, and it was like, Dad, it's not worth your time. And I'm like, it is if you want to get paid tomorrow,
And the lawn,
Yep.
bushes,
Yep.
stuff, that costs
It's a big thing.
money.
Yes. Yeah, we had one last year, and that was the worst project I've ever done. I had partners on that, and it was horrendous. Too many chefs in the kitchen, but it was 5 acres. And every time that we had to cut grass, I'm like, I'm paying your mortgage. I'm paying your mortgage. I'm paying you more. And it was summertime, so that grass was like, and it had a little man-made lake. And then when you started looking at what it cost to like maintain that nice looking man-made lake, so we've been through a lot. We'll go to the next one. So considerations before buying. So this kind of goes hand in hand with what I was talking about earlier, which is how experienced is your team with handling a property renovation of this size, right? Because we just talked very black and white renovations. There's different levels of renovations. And like I said, the simple process I look at is a light, medium, heavy. That's kind of it. Give you an example. If I'm spending like anywhere more than 25, 30,000, that's probably gonna, or maybe even 40,000 nowadays, because nowadays everything's more expensive, even labor. So even if it was 40,000, like we had one that was a light rehab, but the upside was a whole lot less. Why? Because acquisition was high, and acquisition was high because you had to do a whole lot less. So what I realized is that we make so much more by taking on the heavier rehab because we have cost compression there, versus when we compete with everyone that wants to do paint and lipstick. Everyone wants that because that's the easy. But then everyone complains they don't make enough money because you're looking for the easiest thing to do. And that is the easiest thing to do. Higher reward also equates higher risk. So kind of goes hand in hand, unfortunately. But there's ways to mitigate that. Next one. Other one's going to be how fast will your contractor be at completing this sort of project. So you can have the best deal. Your contractor's not moving. Your numbers are not the best anymore. So I think it's really important to also know that is who am I hiring? And like I said, we have different crews. A whole lot of crews. And the reason for that is because of that. There are times where I have a whole project for this one person, but I'm going to outsource this one thing to this one person. Because I know that even if they're a little bit more, they're so much faster. And that to me is critically important, just as important. So I think that's also something for you to consider when you're looking at projects. And then the last one is, do you need permits? If you need permits for your renovation, you know that's going to take time. And so now you have to allot the time for that. So I think sometimes we make that mistake, either not knowing the type of permits that you need to have, and or you don't account for enough time for a permit. And each city and county is very different. Some move faster, some move less fast. So you kind of have to know which county moves at what speed. So Petersburg, for example, you can't do online. You have to go in person to do your permits there. So when do you have time? Maybe you are easy online, but if you live out of town and your contractor's not doing it, or you don't have a contractor, or you don't trust your contractor, you don't have a trustworthy person, you're gonna have to make the drive. So it's like, when am I next available? In 10 days, great. That's 10 days you just chokehold the entire process because you're not available to take a piece of paper and make payment. That stinks.
Bring your checkbook, because they tell you the wrong number.
That was true. They did tell us the wrong number. They're like, actually, you're gonna have to pay a little bit more. It's like, can you just process? I'm like, we can pay on the back end or something? No. Okay. And we did have the checkbook, but it was just like, this was your mistake, not mine. So that's that. Questions so far? Okay, next one. And so, little reminders, save you some money. When you sell a house, cancel your insurance, your utilities as well. That way you can save a little bit of money. Otherwise, I've seen this happen, and I have one client who went many, many months. They kept billing him. City of Richmond kept, utilities, public utilities kept billing him. And he was like, I sold a property 7 months, and they kept billing him. And I was just like, and he would just be so livid. And we called, and I called. I finally have one of my assistants call every hour on the hour and just annoy like the lights out of them to the point where they're like, okay, we're gonna address this. And I was like, I'm gonna annoy you as much as you've annoyed him, and you know that has been shared with everyone else. So last thing to consider, icing on top of the cake is your capital gains. We talked very briefly on it, because once you go through all this headache, great, you make this money, that's not what you keep. Now you have to go ahead and consider your capital gains, which is why you want to eventually maybe explore getting some sort of rental so you can offset, and that's a whole other strategy. But that's how you can do it. So, Luis.
So with all that money, right, you have to pay taxes, you can't roll that into like...
Different strategies, but yes, you could do 1031s, you could do 1031s, you could do reverse 1031s, come again?
Right after the flip, like you get that check.
100%. But you better make sure you start the process early. Meaning, you have a certain amount of time to identify the property, and you have a certain amount of time to close on the property. If you fail to do that, you can and will probably get required to pay those taxes.
So it'd be the 45 and then 180 in total? Like the same thing as like a 1031, like 180 days?
Correct, yeah. And that's what I'm saying, so 1031, yeah. And so the big challenge is this. People have rolled it over, but understand that if you drop the ball, that can be called upon for all of that at once. Yeah, so like if you're gonna use that strategy, it's a great strategy. People have built and kept their wealth using it, and then they have the big step up at the end when you pass, and you step, to your beneficiaries. So it's a great strategy, just understand. And mostly with this market, where there's lack of inventory, it can and is challenging. And then you have to also do it to a similar like property. But there's ways, there's people who can help you with that. Yeah. Like you don't break the rules, you just find, a little bending here and there.
And I've got
within the rules.
A lady, they do reverse 1031s, where after you close, it costs like $5,000, but there's things you could do, and I can put you in touch if you want to talk with JC.
Yeah,
for your deal.
Which depending on how much you're going to pay in taxes, that $5,000 may not make sense, right? But if you're going to save a ton of money, it makes sense. So that's what it's all numbers.
Regular 1031 is like $950.
So for me, why would you want to buy and flip so much when in reality your real estate is going to gain, right? Over the years, real estate continues to grow as more expensive. So keeping them and using them as rentals, why is it that you flip so much when it's going to gain in value over the years?
I say that every day.
So him and I have this conversation all the time.
Where does that generational wealth come in when you're constantly flipping and you have to pay capital gains when in reality real estate you should keep it because what was the price 10 years ago is not going to be the price now and not going to be the price in 10 more years.
Sure.
So it's like
100%.
I don't know, I just see why do I continue to sell? That's not.
I had one, those who are local, I had a project on Overbrook. I still hate the fact I had to sell that. I did it to build liquidity. Hated it. Big Seday's worth just under 400. It was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. It was right by the brewery. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, that's the
Overbrook. Yeah.
The one
and I did that, and I brought a designer, and we did it. It was super cute. And next door, they were doing an Airbnb, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I should have done an Airbnb, and I was just too timid. That's not my strategy. And I should have held on to it because it appraised like crazy. I would have refinanced. I would have had the lowest rate.
But that's what you refinance and take out the money and
Yeah.
build on to the next project.
The challenge is that nowadays properties are so, it's more cost prohibitive, right?
Yeah, interest rates are so high. We're
Maybe, exactly. This is where we bump heads all the time because, man, we should be keeping this. We will be running a negative on this, right? Because what the market will bear is not enough to
Well,
cover
like
that.
right now, it's not worth taking out a loan, especially on a project like that. But if it back then made sense.
Oh, 100%.
If my house is 1.2%, I will never sell it.
Yeah.
Right? It's gonna be like that. People like me that my interest rate was, and I bought in 2019. I'm never gonna sell my house. I will leave it for my kids.
It's a cash
I will
cow.
pull my
Yep.
money if I need to do projects, but it doesn't make sense in that time.
Yes.
So,
In that time, I was just building up capital. I was learning. This is years ago. And so I was just like, just do it. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So now when I talk to people, I talk to them with the end in mind. So like today I had a call, and this is like the agent hat. He's telling me he wants to sell. Great. We're talking, I'm putting the two together. So he says, oh, I bought in 2019. I said, hey, go in 2019, I want to get a person, especially if he doesn't know me. He just got referred to me, so he doesn't really know me. So I'm going to start asking like personal questions like, how much you pay? What's your interest rate? Blah, 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 blah. But the reason is because I was coaching him, and I asked, look, quick question. I said, I know I'm not going to get paid as an agent. That's fine. Quick question. Why don't you keep this? I said, you have a 3% interest rate, and I just want to be really transparent with you. There's a high probability that you and I will leave this earth, and we're not going to see 3%. So you're giving potentially up the investment vehicle for your child and their college and all that, and you already secured it. I just want to make sure that you are our waiter. And now, at the end of the day, hey, I'm going to sell it. That's fine. I'm going to make a commission on it. I just won't want you down the road to say, I wish I would have known. Yeah. So I'm going to be that guy that's going to tell you that now, and you make a decision because you're the driver. So you're in the driver's seat. I'm going to help you either way. And what do I get out of it? You're going to be happy and grateful. You're going to refer me people, and I'll make up in tenfold on that. That's it. And he was just like, I appreciate it, but here's the reason. I don't know how to manage a project. And I was like, the person who recommended you to me, because I used to be a property manager, that's how we met. So I don't do that. I don't want to ever do that. But I know people who do. And I can tell you their fees, and I can tell you they're good. He also said, well, I also don't know how much because of repairs. I said, great, 5 to 10%. I'll walk the property. I'll tell you a rough estimate. It's not going to be perfect. But I was handling all his objections because reality is, on paper, he should not be selling that house. I know that. But ultimately, it's his decision. He was like, well, I also need the money so I could buy it. Well, why don't you take a line of credit? Even if that's higher, at least you have that money. You still have this other asset where there's tons of money at a lower cost. And then down the road, maybe you can sell it. Maybe you'll pay that off, whatever. But the point being, you're about to take a large debt on a new property all at a much higher rate versus you keep this debt here and only take a portion of that for the down payment at a higher rate. Like on paper, that just makes more sense. Yeah. But here's the thing. Some people don't want to do that. And so on paper, that makes more sense. But ultimately, I'm just getting hired to do a job. So whatever you want, I'll help you do. So it doesn't make sense. But for us, that's that. We personally are exploring development and doing new construction. So we're in the middle. We just submitted permits for new construction in Petersburg, the first one. And I have a GC that's working with us, and we're subcontracting everything. It's going to be my foundation guys, my framers. It's going to be my plumbers, my electricians, my roofers, my everything. And this becomes the model, right? Now I have proof of concept. And then I want to go buy some land and do, 10 or 15. And then we're going to go into then maybe talking about syndication of some sort, pulling people, and then it's going to take on something much larger. Because I agree. Why are you doing this for 10%, 20%? I get that. However, welcome to America in 2024 where there is no inventory, everything's expensive, inflation is high, and so are interest rates. So we just kind of have to
cash
pivot.
flow, but we use hard money on most everything, so it makes it difficult with the loans. Type of loans we use, and the timelines with that, and then the cash flow.
It doesn't make sense, yeah. It becomes cost prohibitive.
So,
but that's why we're exploring new construction, because we know that we're saving the agent side, we're saving on the acquisition of a deal, because it's off market. We also know we're saving so much in construction. So where can I save so much with those things? Just go develop, build brand new. Exactly. So now I'm going to be able to go into a deal with 40 to 50% profit margin. And now I'll leave 25 or 30%. I'll pull out tax-free 10% on that. And I'm not getting rich, but if I do 40 of those, and I have a crew that runs 18 framing jobs at one time. So if I can do 20 of these a year, that small profit margin, tax-free, times 20, 30, 40 a year is a whole lot more tax-free, plus I kept the asset, plus I left 25, 30%, plus it does cash flow, and it's a build-to-rent model. So it's appreciation, depreciation, the whole 9 yards. So we are trying to get more smart with it. It's just, it's a means to an end. And in the meantime, you just have cash, and cash is being deteriorated to inflation, right? So if 6% inflation, that $1 million now became $60,000 less, plus if real estate goes up 4%, that's another 4%, so you lost $100,000 of buying power. So instead I prefer just, we're investing, and we're flipping, we're not making as much, but we're hedging against that. And worst comes to worst, we know that we can afford to leave it in the project, and at least we stop one project and then pivot. So it's like big picture, that's all it is. But I agree. If it was just for one project, I wouldn't be doing this.
Like I buy commercial property and I do triple net.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, why am I gonna buy
A lot of profitability.
and then sell it when I
No.
buy it at a low price is probably over $1 million, $2 million. Just the concept of the flipping is where it's been hard for me to grasp and understand, because I'm like, it's triple net, I don't pay nothing.
Yes.
Well, everybody's situation is different. So
See, that's sexy. Commercial's sexy. You know, the triple net is nice, it's attractive. You don't pay anything whatsoever. And so it just depends. It depends, and I guess it also depends what type of commercial asset you're picking up.
Because it also, like, even commercial, like industrial is being hit, especially Northern Virginia, where people used to rent these spaces and now they're working at home. Like, that's not going to work. So it's like, exactly what are we going into? Is it a shopping center? Is it retail?
Correct. Yep.
Because industrial is being hit, commercial very bad, where billion-dollar buildings in Northern Virginia are like empty. Yeah, they're empty. So that's not going to work. So it's just kind of figuring out.
See, the Richmond market is, I think, a little bit different in that sense. Last month, we had a gentleman, Nathan Hughes, who's a commercial broker agent, and he has his own brokerage. And we were talking about commercial unpacking it. And Richmond market is a little more hedge in that sense. There's less downside, but we also have less upside than Northern Virginia, by far. So it goes hand in hand.
Thank you.
Mr. Crumpine knows commercial, too. He does commercial.
What was that?
He says a little bit. He does commercial. Cool. Next one. Questions? Preguntas? You sure? Positive?
Exit strategy.
Cool. Well, we'll wrap up and we'll talk some exit strategies. How about that?
We all want to know.